police force and owning Z or Blackwater Security, realize they're just admin. They're just advertising to you, and they want to sell you the idea that your escape from the pointlessness of reality is to become drugged in alcohol, drugs, sex, or intellectual foolishness so that you won't become the being you should be, and you'll see our world die. And we are living in a dying world. The oceans, even if you're just the barrel-headed scientist, you can tell that the oceans will be dead at the current rate of pollution in 20 years if nothing happens to Earth changes. So look at this. The ancient archetypes of the ages, whether it's Moses and Joshua or any of the ancient civilizations, the spiritual leaders led above the warrior kings. And the reason is, without a vision, as it says in the Bible, my people perish. Every people perishes. Excuse me for this. So, without a vision, my people perish. This is how bad it gets, is that people don't understand that religion without a spiritual connection. And that's why Jesus was the great iconoclast. He's a perfect example. He'd heal people on the Sabbath. He said, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And Daniel said, close up and seal the words of the book to the time of the end. Well, guess what? Just like when you take your kids on a trip, yes, we're there yet. We're there. Mankind has been quarantined since the last fall, and if you read the prophecies of the Hopis or many of the intuitives around the world, again, all these people see little fragments and pieces, like little pieces of pictures that were chopped up and thrown out of the back of an aircraft, and they picked up a piece and said, I think I know what happened. I got this little piece of the photograph in their vision, their dream, or an ancient hope and prophecy. Man has fallen 4 times through ages by the same beings, by the same processes, by the same manipulation, and this is the 5th time. This is the last time. This time, mankind, no matter what technology we think we'll have to protect us from the Earth's changes, no matter what kind of politicians we have, we will not escape without a transformation of the heart of man. This is the call to repentance today. I blow today the trumpet of Elijah. It was said in the book of Malachi that I shall send the spirit of Elijah before the great and terrible day, lest I come and strike the earth with a curse. And that's what we're dealing with. And it doesn't matter what religion you come from. Everyone will know in this heart when I speak this, whether you're a Hopi Indian or you're Mi'kmaq or you're an Indian Swami. For all religions, they know this is the end of the age. This is the end. This is the end of the age of Pisces. This is the start of the age of Aquarius. And I'm going to show you scientific and technical that will not assault your intellect, and you'll understand. That's why we heard presentations by Dr. Len Horowitz. He talks about love is the way. Love is the for-give. God forgave, even though he knew what we would be, and even the fall of one of his great ones, Lucifer, he forgave and created the universe with all its pain and suffering and ignorance. And of course, ignorance is the source, as the Buddha says, of all evil, as well as the Gospel of Philip. A cosmic plane of mankind. Imagine a mankind, just think of this as a thought experiment, traveling at faster than light speed across the cosmos, yet genetically modified to live in these different worlds, invading and destroying, much like the movie Avatar. And most people at the end, even if you're in the military, your stomach was turned at the people in the military just trying to wreck and trash this giant tree and these people. Now, it's manipulation, it's marketing, and of course it's always trying to get you back to the idea you have to buy the lie of the carbon. I call it the carbon death unit, because carbon dioxide as an anthropogenic gas causing global warming is a myth. It is a lie. I was an oceanographer, bacteriologist before I went into medicine 37 years ago. I can tell you it is a bold-faced lie. And I'm going to show evidence for that from scientists that just presented as little as a week and a half ago in Chicago. So many worlds have fallen to this dark empire. Just like we talked about Darth Vader in Star Wars, we have literally been in many Star Wars. We're the remnants of an ancient culture that died. Invasion of mankind, for example, if you look at a group called the Gorgons, they are the chief among these. In the Bible it talks about them as and they have 7 different names, and I'm not going to use them all. The Anakim, the Zamzumim, 200 that landed on Mount Hermon, the name was Semyaze, the chief among them. These are very advanced beings, and we should call them transdimensionals because although they exist in the physical realm, they can combine their genetics with humans. They gave the advanced technologies of agronomics, economics, metallurgy, agriculture, science, and astronomy. Look at the mitre of the Pope. It is a symbol of the fish god Onanes, which is the same as the Dagon god, the god of the Philistines, that fell before the Ark of the Covenant. You'll see it is the same as the Naga, or in South Africa, the Chitahuri of the priests there. All these peoples know this truth. Africa, Oceania, Mesoamerica, Europe, China, you know, whether it's Quetzalcoatl or Kukulkan. And look at this giant Sumerian Nephilim, we call it, the fallen ones. Look at proof of previous transformation times where things didn't work. We didn't pass the exam as a civilization. Underground cities and tunnels. In fact, one of the people I took care of, John Fiala, was one of the cohorts with our other people that worked on these tunneling machines. Personally took care of him. He said they broke through one tunneling system down in the Baja California. When they did rock analysis, the tunnels were estimated to be between 300 and 500,000 years old. Artifacts on the moon and Mars. Did you know they even colorized this Martian sky? So when they're not having a sandstorm, did you know if you're on the surface of Mars, the sky is blue? That's a proper of optics. The sky will be blue there. Nuclei of obsidian glass in northwest India, 200 cities below the oceans, because things like the fall of Atlantis that we think is a myth, written by the Greek historians, is not a myth. It's a historical fact. We've been doing all these specials off. You can even go and watch 3D movies now. All the religious books talk about the gods from the sky, the vehicles, the angels, the messengers. This is one of the tunnel boring machines. And these are, of course, the more simple ones, the ones that have the rotating blades. The more advanced ones have these high compression lasers that hit the rock face and blow the debris at sidewalls at 10,000 degrees and make a 0-degree tunnel and lay an inner core, vacuum it out and put hyperspeed fiber optics using ultraviolet fiber optics. And these are crisscrossing America. This is just one chart, and I know about all kinds more than this. What we call Dumb One, or Deep Underground Military Base 1. And this is why Gary McKinnon, and he, by the way, didn't really hack. He's not a really expert hacker. He got into a naval computer. And by the way, all of our off-world space fleets have got naval designations, you know, like Admiral, whatever. And there is a division, by the way, of the SS, because in the secret treaty of Fort Hunt, they did not surrender to the United States. They became grafted into the CIA through the OSS, DARPA, and all these agencies, all of our mind control projects, all of our space flight projects, all of our plasma engines, and the ramjet, and NASA itself was created from Nazi science. And we collaborated with the Russians right through the Cold War. The Cold War was for public consumption, including the fall of the wall. Human genetics, and this is from geneticists themselves, and I was taught this many years ago. We have 23 genes they call alien. They're not talking about alien meaning from aliens out there. They're saying genes that are not found in any other primate. And the 5th and 3rd chromosomes are fused together. If those happen, because I have a daughter with Down syndrome and I know genetics backward and forward, minor changes in genes are lethal. So our genes have been modified. We are not related directly. We have been tampered with. We've been modified. We even have an expiry date like a toy. So we wind down and our genes switch off the cell divisions. And I'm going to do the keynote presentation on my current theory, which I was given literally by the Most High, to the World Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine this December in Las Vegas on the new theories of anti-aging. God, as he said in Isaiah, when he came as Yeshua HaMashiach, the first time he spoke in the synagogue, he said, though they die at 100, it shall be as the years of a child. God will restore the years, but he's going to restore the spirit of man first by a transformation. He said, I will take your hearts of stone, which are the 10 Commandments, because the 10 Commandments are there to condemn you, because Israel didn't keep the commandment or the covenant. They didn't own the land, and they don't own Israel. They only have the right to be in the land if they're in covenant with the Most High. So we have an abomination. We have the Sabbatean labor Zionists who are killing the Torah Jews who want to return in spiritual covenant. And then the great Aliyah will not just be a trickle of thousands, but of hundreds of millions. Then we will have a world where there will be no more religion except for dance and recipe cards, and we will eat food together and dance and no more kill each other because we have different skin colors or religions, or we think we speak about a different God when we are all brothers and sisters. The sudden appearance of civilization and temples and the ancient technologies of medicine, science, and agriculture. The human genome itself. Now I'm going to talk about some things that are going to happen, and this is hard science. Some of it is classified sources, some of it is public sources, and you can check this out. And the PowerPoint will be posted up tomorrow, and of course my DVD, and I talk about these with many scientists. Some people come on my show under pseudonyms, and they're inside these agencies. The Nemesis dwarf star returned at the time of the Exodus. In fact, we have pretty good evidence that, and this is part of the predictions, this is not a prophecy, this is a scientific prediction, that 3,490 roughly years ago, in that range, during the time of the Exodus of the Hebrews, that God gave this knowledge to Moses and told him to go to the Pharaoh and say it was time for the Jews to leave. And the Santorini volcano that exploded, that dropped debris and caused the cataclysm of the sequential ecological catastrophes that were the plagues of Egypt, you can think about them logically. They're all ecological catastrophes, one following the other. Well, we have proof now that the South Pole Telescope that was put there in 2007 that picks up the cosmic background radiation. We have proof of the Chandra X-ray telescope in the winter, spring of 2010, that there is evidence that there may be, in this object may be causing perturbations in the asteroid belt between Jupiter and Mars. We have the launch of the Sophia German-made telescope on the Boeing 747 just in March that now at 40,000 feet can see unobstructed objects that can generate heat. We have Dr. Harrington's death after announcing the approaching dwarf star. And we're not talking about Planet X. It's not a planet. We're talking about a returning dwarf star. And we are in a trinary star system. The definition of a star is an object that could have become a star, or it gives off more radiation in the bandwidth of the electromagnetic spectrum than it receives. So Jupiter, by definition, giving off more infrared heat and more X-rays, is a star. So just by that, we're binary. And with this dwarf star, which comes below the ecliptic, which is below the plane of the solar system, we are in a trinary system. This is put up by the Americans, the cosmic background radiation. This is the Chandra X-ray Observatory Telescope. And that data, by the way, came out that in 2007, X-ray observations made by Chandra revealed that the object that they thought was a supernova had increased in size 16%. So there's a special team of astronomers, and you can find it out, it's called G1.9, called the Star Viewer team, that believes that there's evidence that this object is now entering the inner solar system below the ecliptic plane, so it's below the southern hemisphere. And that's why all of these astronomical things, including the Vatican, are all in the Chile and southern hemisphere. They know it's coming. It comes back all the time. You can see it in the ancient Egyptian pyramids called the destroyer, the winged destroyer. You can see it in the ancient philosophies of the Indians of Kali. You can see all of these things. You can see the stories in the Hopis about the blue Kachina and the returning, fire god. All of these things are coming, and they know they're happening in our day, which is why they're building off-world space platforms. There is a, if you want to call it, third agenda of colonies on Mars, because they know the cataclysm is coming to this Earth. This is a Spitzer infrared telescope, Sophia, and this is an example. And it's not Nibiru as we talk about where we have these giants. The Nibiruans have never left. The Nibiruans are here. They're among us. They're below us. And there's other creatures even in this Earth. And one of my scientist friends, who is this technician taking care of the Aurora Space Fleet, told me after they did psychological testing on him, and they told him that people can't handle the fact that there have been reptilian beings that have lived in this world for millions of years, and that they are living among us. And they can't believe that, in fact, our whole culture is based on the idea of psychic control and avataring every individual using trans-dimensional reptilians. The word human is a Welsh word meaning hue, meaning serpent, and men. So when the 1215 Magna Carta was made by King John and the Royals, they simply were using the ancient technologies of mind and spirit to control man, to make them slaves, which goes far beyond just marketing. It means that you become a human when your spirit gets literally invaded like a parasite, and your husk of your body is literally controlled like an avatar. And that's happening. And in fact, the greatest power you can get in these high-level Masonic organizations is not human sacrifice or sex magic rituals or killing millions. It's to curse your own seed, your own descendants. That's the greatest thing that will advance you more in the powers of darkness. For any lettered agency, government agency, whatever, is to curse your own descendants. Look at the list of the Xi'an telescope, a collaboration of U.S., China, Europe, and Australia, and the IRES, the infrared telescope. All of them have found evidence that this nearby protostar is coming. Pioneer saw this back years ago in 1984, and it was announced by NASA and then quickly stopped. Now I want to go over some cycles that show not are we heading toward global warming, but global fluctuations in climate, we're heading toward an ice age. And these are cycles that were first brought up by people like Dr. Milankovitch. The first one is the 105,000-year cycle. And if you listen to my programs with people like Robert Felix, who wrote his book, his website is Ice Age Now, great place, and his two books are Magnetic Reversals and Evolutionary Leaps, because at every 11,500 years the magnetic field collapses and reverses. And guess what? That reversal started in '97 when we started passing through the galactic plane, because we go right up and down through the galactic plane. Every 11,500 years we pass through this gravitational well, this photon belt, this debris belt, and as we pass through it, the magnetic flux fields, because the torsion field of the cosmos, of the galaxy, has one direction above the galactic plane and another direction below, so the magnetic reversal has started, and that we will pass the midpoint on what day? December 21st, 2012. We will pass the midpoint. And that's why these civilizations that played in the ball court could see this hoop where the alignment of the black hole in the center of the galaxy, which, by the way, the Gesellschaft and Thule Society called the Black Sun, the Society of the Black Sun. They would see the alignment of that in the center of the galactic plane and the center of our sun and Earth. They know these gravity waves, these gravitational waves, just like the increased earthquakes occur with solar eclipses, lunar eclipses, high tides, and we call these equinoxes, you know, the spring and fall equinoxes. Solar cooling. Right now we've had only 5% of the normal amounts of sunspot activity. And of course the thing that drives ice ages is increased rainfall, and what's happening now? The volcanoes under the oceans are 95% of the rainfall in the world is increasing as we're heading toward, and now we have what's called the 105,000-year cycle, where you go from a circular orbit when the Earth cools to a stretch or elliptical orbit when it warms. And guess where we are now? We are now circular. We are now at the 105,000-year cycle for another ice age. We're also, every 11,500 years, when we pass through the galactic plane, there are increased earthquakes and volcanism. The continents and the changes in the position of the magnetic pole moves in advance of the position of the rotational North Pole. And since the 20th century, the North Pole moved at 10 kilometers per year towards north-northwest out of Canada towards Siberia. In '97, it started moving at 41, and now it's up to 43 kilometers per year moving towards Siberia. We have a pretty good idea where and how far the pole will move when the North Pole rotation moves. And we're not talking about moving the continents. We're talking about moving the position of the rotational axis of the Earth. It's two different things. The magnetic pole anomaly started about 7, 8 years ago for Sirius, but it started back in '97 off of the Ross Ice Shelf in Antarctica, and now it's spread since last year from Antarctica all the way to South Africa at the Radiomagnetic Research Facility there. And off the east of these volcanoes, the Jökulfocal, the Hekla and the Kitla volcanoes in Iceland are blowing their top. That anomaly is expanding where it's now South Pole in that zone of the oceans in the northern Arctic Circle. And off the Ross Ice Shelf is actually North Pole now. So these things are real. You can check it out yourself. You can see the decrease in the magnetic field. The carbon nanobuckyballs occurs at this 11,500 years. Iridium, beryllium, hydrocarbon layers in the rocks of the world. The reverse of the magnetic flux field is known by all geologists. Movement of the continents occurs discontinuously, and the appearances of species and the death of many of the species, especially larger ones, larger than about 25 kilograms, massive die-off, mastodons, with their tusks pulled out of Baffin Island, 26 feet long, that died with food frozen in their mouth. We estimated how cold they had to be frozen that quickly. It would be equivalent to being dropped into liquid nitrogen, where the troposphere collapsed 50, and dropped the temperature to 160 to 200 degrees below zero, just like the day after tomorrow. The Milankovitch cycle is tied to the tilt as well of the Earth, and this gives you an idea of the axis. And what it does is the North Pole axis rotates between these three stars, the Vega, Alpha Draconis, and our current North Star that we have now. Okay, in the precessionary cycle, this is what happens to the galaxy. The galaxy is called the Orion arm of our galaxy, moves up and down like a carousel across this galactic plane. It's a debris belt, it's a gravitational well, and it's a place where objects that are in hyperelliptical orbits like our dwarf star cousin, the Nemesis dwarf star, exist. And of course, there's other cycles. There's the 360-year cycle, which caused the historical collapse of all the civilizations over the last 6,000 years when the cooling occurred during the Middle Ages. When the ancient Sumerian civilization fell, they all occurred at these Maunder minimum type cycles, roughly when Jupiter and Saturn align times 2, which happens every 180 years times 2. There's a cooling of the Earth, and all of these, of course, are tied to gravitational waves from Jupiter and Saturn aligning, causing increased volcanism and increased rainfall. All of these occurred, and guess what? All of these cycles are now ready in our day for a major ice age. This looks like the little ice age there. You can see the cooling and the time again for another global cooling. And the River Thames, of course, froze every year during that time. The Vikings left Greenland. Now, of course, they're saying Greenland is having a high over there. But these anomalous switches where it's high and low, and of course the globalists continue to push through their mind control magazines to say that, no, this isn't real, that we're not going to have an ice age. Just like that, that movie last night that talked about this. Volcanism and aerosols, the net effect is to increase. Maybe people remember Mount Pinatubo and El Cajon, Mount Pinatubo 91 and El Cajon. These cause global cooling. And the aerosols, the net effect is to cool the Earth, not to warm it. Okay? So that's how serious this is.